Welcome back, guys. So today I want to discuss a question that a young fellow had asked me. I think what he was getting at was how does somebody who does not have a job, or maybe even just low income, go about acquiring the tools to be able to get into woodworking. I don't know what his background is, or if he's like maybe still living at home or has a job or whatever, but I don't know. I would say probably first off, you're going to have some form of employment or some sort of income, and invest a portion of that income every week or whatever, every time you get paid. Invest some of that. Maybe it's only $25 or $50, whatever you might be able to afford. As much as you can afford. I would probably like, let's say if you can, after you pay all your bills, and then you see what you have left before you buy food and everything like that. Maybe, like a lot of people might do is, at least put $20 back every week for a retirement fund first off. After that, maybe see if you can put $25 back after that, or $50, whatever you might be able to do. I know a lot of woodworking tools are pretty expensive. I got a lot of tools laid out here. You could start off with, find you a $20 hatchet or something, like right here. I bought this new a good 20 years ago from Lowe's. I actually have two of them now. One of them was my brother's before he passed away. This one was mine. And I was about 21 years old when I bought this hatchet, and I'm almost 42 now. And I've hung on to this thing and tried to take pretty good care of it all the time I've had it. It has ended up with some pitting and stuff because it ended up in the bottom of the toolbox, and so it ended up with a little bit of rustiness, and I ended up cleaning that up and restoring it again. Recently, a few months back, I bought me a draw knife. I'm gonna tell you, you will not find anybody that I know of who had all the tools that they needed for the woodworking they might be doing now. They did not start off having everything right from the get-go, okay? There's a lot of guys out there, they've got many years in the woodworking or fabrication. I've got a lot of years in metal fabrication, understanding how to build things, understanding how wood moves when it dries, the way it shrinks and stuff, understanding angles and math. If you're still in school, you probably need to focus on learning stuff like math, and maybe even if you can get yourself into a engineering class that can start teaching you engineering. That's something that I didn't do. It's just stuff that I've learned on the job over the years, so I kind of learned the hard way. If you're, I don't know how old you are, but if you are, maybe I need to speak to a larger audience, but if you're in school, then you need to focus on your schoolwork. And if you can get yourself into a wood shop at your school. I did 4 years of wood, no, 4 years. 4 years of wood shop, because 1 year was in what do they call it now? The junior high. In junior high, we had a small wood shop in there. They had like a screen printing class that you could take, stuff like that in the junior high. yeah, as soon as you can get into some sort of class, that's what I would advise. If you've already you're out of school and maybe you're a little bit older and you're wanting to get into woodworking, hopefully you have a job of some sort so you can take a little bit of that income and invest it. If it's $10 or $20 a week, that's how you build wealth. That's how you get places. Is you start hacking away at your goals and reaching those goals. You may reach that goal a little later than you may want to have reached it, but there's no time like the present to start. I mean, it's kind of like when you come up to a big giant tree and all you've got is a hatchet. Okay, now you got to think about society and how society has been built up. When you know, we started off as like cavemen living in caves or whatever in this country. Maybe even probably worse than that, I don't know. But we dang sure didn't start off living in a skyscraper or in housing. So we started off with sticks and stones, and we built our way up, and that's kind of how everybody has to do it when they start out. There's no silver spoons given out anymore to anybody. If you think differently, you probably need to reevaluate your thinking, because if you think there's people in this country, and I know there are some people that were born into wealth, but if you weren't born into wealth and you think there's people who they catch all kinds of breaks and stuff, you probably are one of those people who really should reevaluate your way of thinking. Because if you're one of them people who sees somebody who is successful and you envy them, then you probably need to reevaluate the way you think, because most of those people have probably busted their butt and worked theirself to the bone in a way that you could probably never understand. I know this from experience, because owning a trucking company and being somewhat successful, I guess I'm still successful. I haven't filed bankruptcy yet, but I'm not doing so great right now. But you know, that's why I can't afford to buy any other tools or anything. We're kind of, I mean, the economy is growing, but not growing very, very good. It's just kind of going along. But you know, people are making money. We're just not making a whole lot of money, right? So you got to start somewhere, and so if you start somewhere, you start putting back $5 or $10 or whatever it is, or taking on a second job. I mean, the way it sounded was that you can't afford to put anything back. Which, I mean, most of us probably felt that way right at the beginning anyway. We thought, man, there's no way. And you've got to buy a table saw, you got to buy a router, you got to buy, no. You need to think differently. Maybe go out and buy you some hand saws, buy some chisels, some hand planes, you know, some, you know, like, I think this hand plane here, this is a Miller's Falls number 97. I found this at like a flea market antique store. Okay, yeah, I had to sharpen it up. Okay, had to go buy a sharpening stone and the guide and everything to be able to sharpen this up. But I made an investment. Okay, I think I paid. It was less than $20 for this one, less than $20 for that one. That one over there is a newer one, the Cobalt, and it cost me $20 to $25. That was brand new. So, yeah, you can start with that, but instead of just buying tools, you need to focus more on just thinking about what it is that you want to make. Let's say you want to make workbenches, okay? A workbench like this right here, if I had finished it, the bottom of it's not quite finished up just yet. The top of it's pretty well finished. But I got the legs on there, got it all glued up and flipped it over, and I've just been using it. There's quite a bit more I want to do to it, like drilling some more holes in it, putting dowel rods into it, and gluing those in, and flush cutting those and sanding it and everything, making it just, you know, really nice. I also want to put a leg vise on one end, or some sort of vise on the side of it here. It is kind of a workbench, and it's also an outfeed table for my table saw. So when you go to start buying tools, first off you need to know what it is you're wanting to make, and then identify what tools you're going to need to make that product. And you also need to focus on who your target audience is, who you are trying to sell to, and research that. See how much those are selling for. There's a lot of workbenches out there selling for over $1,000 a workbench, but you're probably going to spend the better part of a week to build one workbench. So you're going, I mean, and if you're using pallet wood, it's not kiln dried, so there's some value there that's not there. I mean, that's lost, because that when you buy wood that's been kiln dried, it is, you know, there's time that you're not going to have to spend sitting there acclimating that piece of wood to an interior building's moisture. So you need to learn about the woodworking, how to fix mistakes. You spend a lot of time learning or figuring out how to make something, and which is probably 20% of your time in a project. And then I think there's a meme about this actually, and you spend 75% of your time figuring out how to fix a mistake, because you end up with so much time invested in a project, and you end up with a crack or tear out or something, and then you've got to fix it because you've got so much invested in it. And so you need to also know how to fix things. So I mean, it's not just investing in the tools. You need to invest in your education. You need to invest in your research, as far as like what it is you're wanting to sell. Sure, you can make some money off of making workbenches if you're good at that. Now, if you're going to go down to Lowe's and you're going to buy a whole bunch of 2x4s that are like stud grade, cruddy 2x4s, and you're going to start making workbenches out of them, you're not going to make very much, because, well, number one, if it's not made out of a hardwood top, you're probably not going to sell it. People are going to look at it and they're going to say, I can make that, and they might go home and try and fail. But the point is, you didn't make the sale because you made it out of pine. If you want to make one out of pine yourself, for yourself, that's fine. I'm just going to tell you, you're probably not going to sell that workbench for $400 or $500. You darn sure ain't going to sell it for no $1,000 or $1,200. Now, I don't think that mine is that nice that it would sell for that much. Definitely not yet. I still have to put a vise on there, like a hardwood leg vise would be nice. Drilling some 3/4 inch holes in it, putting some dogs in there. Your hold downs. The iron hold downs. If I got some hold downs for it. If I put a drawer that can pull out from underneath of it, where I can store some tools underneath that tabletop, maybe down a little bit with a piece over top of it to keep stuff from falling through the holes down into the drawer, So it'd have to be an enclosed drawer. going in there. I don't know if I would do that or not. Kind of thinking about just putting a bottom in the base there so I can stack up wood like I do right now to let it air dry. That's kind of what I'm using that for right now. You can make boxes, you can make plaques. If you're going to get into making workbenches, and now to flatten the top, you can make you a router sled that's as simple as this right here, with a couple of rails they got to be straight, okay, and they would go on either side of it, and then the router sled goes across this way, and then you run it back and forth. That's how you can flatten the top without having to have a planer, and that's the biggest problem that most guys have. You run into a point where you're making a tabletop, and that's why the cost goes up, because, well, a planer that does 36 inches wide is several $1,000s, okay? So that in itself raises the price of anything like that, okay? So if you want to just make boxes, you may start off with something small, like some boxes like this. Get you a router table, or maybe even just a table saw. If all you can afford is a table saw, get one. Get you a table saw and go buy the lumber, and you can start making boxes. You're probably going to have a little trouble making money off of these because they seem so easy and simple to make. If you can add some more value to it, you might sell it. You can sell a box usually for around $40, $45. You might get somewhere with that. Depends on the market, where you live. Like where I live, it's really a cheap market here. It's really hard to make money in this area. If you're further towards the East Coast, people tend to pay a little more money for wood projects, wooden furniture, stuff like that. I've had a lot of people ask me if I make furniture. I don't. I mean, I kind of do. I made this this walnut bench right here that I was just sitting on, and I've got a cedar piece here that I'm going to make a cedar bench out of, okay? And this is, where's my tape measure? That is 4 inches thick, 11.5 inches wide, and 40 inches long, okay? This piece of cedar alone right here cost me, I believe it was like $65, and I get a discount, okay? So most other people that go to that supplier to buy one of these is going to be paying like 75 or 80 bucks for one of these, just for something that you would make a bench top, cedar bench top out of. So recovering your cost out of something like that tends to get a little hard to do. Now I have a CNC router over here, and I've made a Kansas City Chiefs coffee table. Out of cedar. I had about $35 or $40 worth of cedar. That was just the lumber, okay, in that coffee table. I ended up selling that for $175. I think I priced it for $200, and the guy talked me down to $175 because he had to drive an hour to get to me, and I wasn't willing to ship it. Okay, he wanted it bad enough that he came and drove all the way here to get it that night. I stayed up late, but he actually showed up, which surprised me. A guy came all the way from Springfield, Missouri, way over here, a good hour and a half away, to buy that coffee table off me. But I spent hours. Okay, I bought an $800 machine plus tax, all the bits, hold downs, stuff like that. Bought a laptop that cost me $1,200. I could have went with a cheaper laptop, but I bought a $1,200 laptop. All the bits and everything, the electricity, the time learning how to do that stuff on the computer, and did a basic carving, okay, on this. And not only that, I also had to have a planer to plane that cat. Hang on just a second. Oh, I had to close that. Sorry about that. I had to close the door there. That cat meowing was about to drive me nuts, and I'm sure it was probably about to drive you guys nuts too. Okay, so this coffee table, I actually made a coffee table and I priced it for 200 bucks. And I bought a coffee table base. It was just like a wrought iron base from a local thrift store type place. And I actually sell quite a bit of stuff on her site. And it's a Facebook page. But so anyway, that cat's still up there meowing. She's in heat, driving me crazy. I got a boy cat up there too, so we're probably going to end up with kittens before too long. We need to get them fixed. Anyway, so yeah. Where was I? All right, so I made this carving in the coffee table top. And the guy did not want the base. And so then I was willing, I was at first I was just like, no, I can't sell it for any less than 200. I really wanted 250 for it. And I had listed it for 250 or 275 before. And I knocked it down to 200 because it hadn't sold and I just needed it gone. I needed the money from it. And so I needed to get paid a little bit of money for making that. And I spent all the time, and the carving had messed up, and I fixed the problem with it. That was almost a $100 mistake. I mean, I already had what was it, 35, 40 bucks in it, plus the epoxy, and oh man, all the work I put into it, and it was almost ruined by the machine messing up. So you got risk involved right there. So I got it carved, and then I filled in everything with colored epoxy, and then I done a polyurethane. I mean, and we're talking about days, okay, days of waiting for everything to cure, and then it sit here for months, and then I dropped the price on it, relisted it on Facebook Marketplace, and that's where a lot of my sales usually come from. Not that I make a lot of sales or anything, because I have a second business I have to run, but it's hard for me to tell someone else how to do it when I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I mean, I understand the concept, how to run a business in doing something. You've got to get paid for the stuff, and you've really got to focus on where your market is, who is your market. In woodworking, for plaques and boxes and different stuff like that, a lot of times it ends up being the females that you're trying to sell stuff to. If it's something like a plaque or maybe it could be male or female for this one here, like a coffee cup hanger, but typically it's going to be a female that's going to buy something like this. This has got the lids for a mason jar, where you can put mason jars up here. You can hang your coffee cups on the pegs. You can put your coffee and sugar up here, and it's a little rustic decoration for your house. That right there, all the time I have invested in that, I would need to sell that for probably at least $100, and well, it hasn't sold yet. I don't even have it up for sale anymore. You've seen the spaces in between the wood, those actually used to be glued together, which is a good reason to get you a moisture meter. That was before I had me a moisture meter, and these have prongs, okay? And I think I paid about 20 bucks for this, and it needs a new 9-volt battery. But you would stick this deep into the end grain of your wood, and then you can press the low or the high, and what you have here is it goes from 7 to 15, and then that's for the low side, Then if you hit the high side button, it will go from 16 to 35. You know, you have numbers up on the top, and that's how you would read that. There's more technical moisture meters out there. Some of them you can just like lay it on the board and it measures the moisture in the middle of that board. I think you have to program it as to how thick the board is or whatever, and it will pretty darn accurately tell you what the moisture content is of that piece of wood. So I've got a lot of basic tools here, ranging all the way from your basic hand saws, like Japanese style hand saws. I really like those a lot better than the Western style hand saws, because, well, the Western style hand saws are really hard to get started, and Japanese, these are pull saws. Like this one here is one of my favorites, and it is a dovetail saw. Okay, it has a rigid back here, and it's limited as to how deep you can cut, but this thing, to cut a piece of wood with it's almost magic. Then get you a nice set of chisels, and I would probably start off with some chisels, a mallet, and some hand saws. And then of course you're going to need like your layout tools. Those are going to be some very, very needed tools. Okay, probably the first one I would get is, you know, if I was very limited budget, I would get me a combination square. Okay, get you one of these. This can pretty much take the place of a speed square because this is adjustable. This can also take the place of a marking gauge. Okay, pretty much. I mean, this one here, it has kind of a knife edge, and it for doing dovetails, and you mark it with this puts that knife edge cut in your dovetail to have cleaner dovetails. So later on, you can invest a little more into speed squares. If you're not building houses, you probably don't really need a really big one. I like the big one because if I'm going to cut the ends off of a table to square it up, which is what you're going to have to do if you build one of these benches, you can actually lay this on there, and you can use your circular saw and use this larger square as your guide to guide your saw and make it a nice straight cut. There's other ways of doing that too. Maybe using like a 2x4 or a piece of 1/4 inch plywood or something like that, and clamp it down. You need to get clamps, but you know, you can start off with this right here and a pencil, maybe a framing square. Then I would also get a brace and bit, and you can usually get a lot of these in flea markets. What do they call them again? Well, flea markets, yard sales and stuff like that. Then you can go buy you a set of bits, and they still make bits that will work in these. If you're going to maybe start off with timber framing style stuff, stuff like that really can sell. If you're making like some timber frame benches or something like this, you can sell these. Okay, just mine's a little bit tall. It's about 6 inches too tall. That's why I have this block of wood I set in front of it. I actually am using this now. It was upstairs, like where when you come in the door, you could sit down on it and take your boots off or whatever. So you're not tracking snow and mud into the house. Then I'm going to make another one out of cedar, but this one is held together with some big long lag screws, and I don't really like that design. It's not rickety or wobbly or anything. It's still holding together several years later with quite a bit of abuse, and you know, I like the way it is. I don't want to really change it, but from the future or into the future ones that I make, I'm going to try to make them more just timber frame style. So you're going to need bits like this to do something like that. And these have the screw points on them, which helps you find your center, and they also, the screw helps pull that bit into the wood. So a good set of bits and a brace is something nice to start off with, and you're probably going to end up spending more on a set of bits like this than what you will for a brace like this. Now, if you may already have one, if you don't, you can get you a cordless drill, and this one here, it's a 20 volt and Porter cable. It's pretty darn good. It has lasted me a long time, and I bought it in a kit where it comes with this impact right here. This thing is so torquey, I've actually broke off or twisted off one of these heat treated socket adapters. This is a 1/4 inch socket adapter that plugs into it, and I've used this thing like crazy. I love it. And we've got magnets right here on the top, so you can actually stick a bit right there and it'll stick there to it. Oh, let's see. If you're wanting to make handles or something, I don't know if you're really going to make much money making handles, because people tend to not pay a whole lot of money for like an axe handle. I've made one axe handle with this draw knife here. The draw knife, I think I paid $8 for that draw knife, and I ended up having to use my belt sander to clean it up and resharpen it and everything. But then I bought a bit, an axe head, basically, because it still had the handle stuck in it, and it was just a piece here on it left sticking out, and it looked like somebody had hit it. They'd missed this, like they were splitting a piece of wood or something. Someone was maybe holding on to it like this while it sat on top of a log, and somebody else maybe hit it right here with a sledgehammer, or splitting the back of a splitting maul or something. It had a dent in it, but it was busted. It busted the handle off. And so I used a piece of pallet wood. It was actually this piece right here. This is just a cutoff from it, but it was a piece of white oak that was a runner from the on the bottom side of a pallet. And so I mean, that will help you make something. If you can, just get you one hand plane, like an old one like this. I wouldn't advise buying this newer Cobalt. Just stay away from those. They seem, I am not happy with my Cobalt at all. I bought it brand new, and I thought, man, this thing's brand new. It's got to be sharp. I mean, surely they sell it sharp, where you can use it out of the packaging. But if you get it out of the packaging, you're going to sit there and spend a couple hours sharpening and flattening the back of that iron to get it to where it will work, especially if you're working with hardwoods. Now, and it doesn't even keep an edge. That's my biggest gripe about it. It won't keep an edge. Now this one here, this old Shelton number 14, I love it. This thing is nice. It has held an edge. I've used the holy Moses out of it. Right? You can see I've got all kinds of sap stuff built up on it. I know I need to clean it. That means I gotta get some laundry detergent and warm water out and a scrub brush, and I gotta take this thing apart and clean it, and probably take a hair dryer to it and dry it, and then oil it, get it all cleaned back up. Don't take no wire brushes or grinders or stuff like that to it. And then I've got this one here, the Miller's Falls number 97. It's a block plane, and I use this one a lot for making shavings. So when I ship out one of my products, and this, take this from one of my playbooks, so when I ship out products to people, and since I have a lot of scrap pieces of cedar, I make packing peanuts, basically, out of cedar shavings. So what I'll do, whenever I need more of these, I've got quite a few of them bagged up. I've even tried to sell these in bags, and I just haven't sold any yet. It's like $2 for a bag, and no one will buy it. So I mean, you got to see what your market is, no one wants to pay anything for that. But like when I send stuff out to people, I put that in there. That's how I package stuff instead of going and buying packing peanuts or something to package stuff up, and that's still pretty lightweight. And the way I make those is I'll take an offcut of cedar, and usually it'll be a piece that's shorter than this. Like this right here, it was a mess up in the CNC, so I can't make a plaque out of it, but I can take this and put it in the vise, and I can go down through there and make shavings like that right there. All right. Now, if I want to make a curlicue shaving, I'm probably going to have to clamp this up a little bit here. And these right here are really, really valuable clamps to have. So if I want to make a spiral of, put this in a vise, usually not on the table saw. But what I want to do, instead of just going straight with the grain or with the board, I want to go at a skew, okay? So I go in here at an angle and push it straight with the board. So hold the plane at an angle. Whoops. And it starts making curlicues. I gotta turn this around. I'm going against the grain. No, maybe not. So as you can see, you end up with a bunch of curlicues if you do it that way. And for some reason I can make them a little, the other boards I was doing was a little narrower. And so they were making a finer to get to about the right size here. Kind of like these, they almost look like little streamers or something. But so you can make a bunch of them like that. So then you end up with a bunch of these. They end up all over the floor. But when you pick them all up and you put them together and use them for maybe photography, it just looks nice. Okay? So you want to be creative. You want to know who you're going to be selling to, how to market things to people, know what you're wanting to make, and what equipment you need to make that. And a lot of times it takes an immense amount of investment, whether it be money or your time. A lot of time in learning the knowledge, like maybe even having to learn computers to be able to use a CNC for carving. Maybe you can't do not that you can't, but maybe you don't know how to do hand carving. So yeah. I don't know where else to go with this. So there's little products like these right here, napkin holders. Now, if you bought a CNC and you had a lathe and a chop saw and everything else, and you could make these right here, I've made these primarily on the lathe. And I took this from Greenwood. It was completely green about 3 days ago and made it on the lathe, and now it's dry. It's completely dry because it's pretty thin and it's pretty dry in here. But these, if I had like a CNC type laser engraver burner thing, I could probably put some sort of design around these, and then they might sell. Like this right here, sure, I could sell them for what, 50 cents? And it took me probably 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes for each one. That ain't worth it. You know, so you know, there's lots of tools out there, specialty tools you can buy that help make things faster. You can make things out of pallet wood, like this right here is a pallet. I made a little pattern here, and knowing how to make patterns, and you know, you put that upright pattern on it or whatever, and it helps me make these right here where I make them all the same. And sometimes you end up having to sand down one because, well, the board was a little shorter or something, like this one here. I didn't sand it down, I left it the same. It leaves it a little rustic looking. And so this is just a quarter of a pallet here, and I put a top and a bottom on it. And you know, you can put your spices in here or your crafts and stuff in there. You could probably drill some holes in this board here and put some dowel rods sticking out to hang things on. This right here, this dowel rod right here, you can hang little S hooks on that, and maybe be able to hang cooking utensils or something on that. Or you could make some derivative of this right here. There's so many things out there a person could make. You could maybe invent something. You could maybe make a tool. Like something I could maybe make is like this jig right here, and I just crunched a bunch of those shavings. So let me move this router out of the way. All right, so I've got this small router here, and I can put a dovetail bit in this router, and with this jig I can put dovetail splines in the box. It helps add a little bit to it, but it doesn't really make it to where you can sell the box for a whole lot more money. And this is a jig that I spent quite a few hours designing and building. And basically, you can make something similar to this that will go on a router table. And so basically, you would take your box to the router table, and you would put your box corner right in here, and then you would slide this across your router table with the fence right here. That creates an issue with much larger boxes, and for smaller boxes, I put this piece of wood in here that gives you, like, let's say if you're on the corner here, it helps keep it from tilting on you. So what you can do, let's just imagine that this tabletop is the corner of a box. So you would put this on that corner, okay, and then you would have your dovetail bit in your handheld router. Then you would come in here like this, and you turn it on, and then you would cut, and it wouldn't move like that. You'd probably clamp it to the table for one, but anyway, you cut through there like that, holding it nice and steady against it. Cut all the way through it. Once you've cut through it, you pick it up, and this jig comes with it. So sure, I could probably set up and run a batch of those and sell them to people. But could I actually sell them for enough money to pay for all the hardware that I've put in it and all the time I've put in it? I probably could. If I made, probably 20 of those at one time in one run, I could probably make money off of them. But I don't know that I could. The only way is by actually making it and then trying to sell it. That's another issue a lot of people will run into, is if you don't make it, if it's not something I can put my hands on and hold or see, people they don't want to buy stuff like that. So a lot of times you end up making, I'm trying to find a product like this right here, a mallet head, and I'm still working on this. It's got a cabin scene carved into it. You might be able to see this side a little better. It's got some green paint in there because, well, apparently a piece of wood that I sanded on the belt sander had green paint embedded in it. And then I sanded this, and well, it ended up embedding the green paint into this, and I need to probably change the belt and resand it. This is a piece of fat wood, and they call it fat wood because it's just soaked with sap. It's got so much thick sap built up in it, just stuck in there. It's really heavy and dense, and it makes a really good mallet head. I have another one here made out of the same stuff right here, and you probably see me use it in quite a few of my videos over here on the lathe for whenever I'm driving the spurless center into a piece of wood. I use this end right here. I try not to beat up this other end too bad, and so I use this one end. I have to wrap on it pretty good. So that fat wood holds up pretty good for that. So that's another thing you need to know, like what species of wood is used for what. And a lot of times you can get away with using other woods, like a lot of people want to use walnut and maple, like hard maple, to make their mallet heads, or even some exotic woods or something. Now, you probably want to stay away from exotic woods as you start out, because exotic woods cost a lot of money, and getting your money out of that, people really don't care that you paid $20 a board foot for that piece of wood, or $50 a board foot, and you only got a little block for 40 bucks or something. When you try to make a mallet out of if I had, let's say this is a piece of exotic wood, and I had paid $20 for this right here, and then I spent the time shaping it, carving it, putting a mortise and putting a handle in there, and making it just look nice, kind of like this mallet here or something. And I'm like, well shoot, I've got $20 into just the mallet head itself, plus $10-15 in shipping, plus another $10-15 in shipping to send it to the customer. Man, I'm gonna have to charge $100 to make a dime off of it, so you gotta watch it. You gotta plan out what it is you want to make, how much it's going to sell for. You gotta know what shipping is going to cost you. Something like this is pretty heavy. If you're milling it, sure, you can put it in a if it fits, it ships box, but a lot of times if it's lighter, you can package it in a smaller box and pay regular postage, and it's a little cheaper. But then you also want to insure your stuff, because it might get there and then they might say that it never got there. So you got to kind of watch your butt on stuff like that too. I have had that happen before. So, but you want to plan it out and wisely invest in equipment, and probably don't buy a piece of equipment until you know what project you're going to be doing and what tools you need to make that project. Once you need that tool, then you go out and buy it, then you have that tool, and you always have that tool. And so if you can maybe get your name out there in front of people, to where they see your work, and it just takes time. You're not going to get there just overnight. It takes time, it takes effort, and you have to do what you can do. And maybe you've got a full-time job, and hopefully you have the weekends off or something. And if you can go home and be in your wood shop or your little area, kind of like I got here, but I'm hardly ever able to be here because my job it takes me far away from here. So when I am able to be here all the time, or for a period of time, it takes me a bit of time to get into that creative mode, get the juices flowing, and really get to start making things. Plus, I'm trying to do YouTube, trying to shoot videos. I've actually spent about 4 hours this afternoon trying to shoot a video and trying to get it under an hour. So I've shot this video 4 times, and so the other thing is trying to source your wood. Like, I'm getting a lot of blocks of wood, sawing them up on the table saw, and in doing that, I needed, or ended up having a need for a circular saw blade sharpener. So I went to Harbor Freight and bought one, and when I got this, with the discounts that I got on it and everything, the coupons I used, I think I paid like $40 or $45 for this. And it's got a diamond blade in there, and it's been one of probably the best thing I've bought from Harbor Freight, other than my lathe. My lathe I've been really happy with. The only problem I've had with my lathe is it was kind of my own screw up. It's got this long tool rest, and it's a cast iron tool rest, and I had a piece of square stock in there. I was supposed to be rounding it out, and I was all the way out on the very left hand side of that tool rest, and it caught and it broke that side of the tool. Well, it broke the whole the tool rest bar off of the post on the bottom. Just snapped it. I mean, it was almost like nothing. This one here, I've had some catches and it hasn't broke, so I'm thinking maybe that one part was a little bit defective. But I went back to Harbor Freight, and they actually went and got one off of their floor model, or their, the display model, and they gave it to me, said, here you go, that's the only one we got. It's going to take a while to get one shipped in, and I needed it right then and there. So they gave me that one, and everything was good. It hasn't broke yet. If it does break, I'll probably just buy an aftermarket one, to be honest. Because if this one breaks, I'm going to be done with their tool rest. There's like another piece that goes with the tool rest that came with the machine, and that's this right here. Big old extension, I guess, to go way up. I don't know what that's for. I don't need that. I guess you might need that if you were using the other side over here for something. Anyway, I haven't had to use that one yet. So I hope I answered your question. Just really kind of think things through before you just go out and buy things. Everything, all the tools I have here, I had a need for the tool in one way or another for some project or another. I've used them for some project. A lot of them have ended up on YouTube. A lot of them have not. I've made a lot of things for a lot of people, sold to them, and they have not made it on YouTube. I've done a lot of recording, and I just don't really have the time to edit all the video. There's many hours of video gets recorded and does not actually get put out there. So because, I mean, it gets messed up, or I lose footage or something and I can't complete it, or something just goes completely haywire and I just, trash the whole idea or whatever. But most of the time I have to make a product before I can ever sell it. It's usually not anybody coming to me wanting something made. Now these right here, a relative came to me and asked for me to make some of these for her, and so we sold them to them and they put them up in their house and they look great. But yeah, it's really rustic looking, nice, it's cool. You can make bowls, but good luck making money off of bowls. That's a tough one I haven't figured out yet. So anyway, I hope I've answered all your questions about trying to start up a wood shop or getting into woodworking, how you can do it on a budget. And I mean, I think everybody has started off on a budget, and I'm still on a budget of $0. So I've acquired a lot of tools, and then trying to maintain those tools and keep things sharp and in good working condition. If the motor goes out on my table saw, that's really going to hurt me bad. And I've really worked this table saw hard. Another thing you've got to figure in is the cost of electricity. That's another thing that's pretty hard to figure in. I guess you're just going to have to throw in a number in there, unless you actually have a separate meter for your wood shop and you see how much money you're actually putting into electric for making a certain project. I don't know how else to meter that. Basically, figure it into your time and however much your shop rate would be for making projects. I see a lot of guys like Matt Cremona and a lot of guys on Instagram and YouTube making things that I don't think I don't know if any projects he's ever sold other than the wood that he's selling. That he built that big sawmill and he's making these slabs and selling the slabs. That's how you run a business. He put a ton of investment into making that machine. He built his own machine because there's no way you can afford one of those things. You're talking 75 grand, 80 grand or more for a sawmill that has the capability of what he's doing with that sawmill. Then you go and sell a slab for $300 or $400, and you get 9 slabs in a tree, maybe $300 or $400 a piece, maybe 500 for some of them, depending on what species it is or how nice looking it is. Yeah, you could start making some money that way. So start thinking about it from a business standpoint and figure out how you can do it. Be creative, be innovative. We'll see you next time.